Great, thanks. Well, welcome everyone to the virtual public meeting for the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment for the Bus Emphasis Corridors. I'm Elizabeth Watkins with the Transportation Planning Organization, and I'm a co-lead on this initiative with my colleague, Katina Corcoran. And we're really excited to have you here this evening to learn about this initiative. Before we dive into the presentation, I'd like to just recap a few housekeeping rules. We'll go ahead and keep folks muted just the presentation, but we'll please use the chat pod, and then we'll enable unmuting so we can hear from you if you prefer to give your comments to come on camera or come off mute and give those comments. When we reach that portion of the agenda, we'd like to take comments or questions first, and then comments later, just for purposes of the recording. So if folks just have a couple questions, they can pop off. So we'll go ahead and get started. So here's an agenda of how we expect to use this hour this evening. First, we'll start off with an overview about the comprehensive plan and exactly what these bus emphasis corridor initiative means. And then we'll walk through the details of the draft map, the draft policy language, as well as the density and intensity bonus table. Then we'll round out the presentation with sharing some resources with you, including the project page, the schedule, and of course share contact information, because we know we just have an hour today, but we'd love to hear your feedback through adoption. So please don't think that this is your only opportunity to weigh in. And then lastly, we'll have a Q&A and discussion, and that's probably the portion I'm most excited about. Very much looking forward to hearing your feedback this evening. So a bit about the comprehensive plan for those who don't know. The comprehensive plan in Hillsborough County sets the long-range policy direction for a community. It houses many important parts of community resources, including land use, environmental protection, infrastructure, mobility, and sets that policy direction and includes goals, objectives, and policies as steps to help realize that future that the community desires. It's a really important document that's updated regularly about every 7 to 10 years and is amended in between then if necessary. And not only is it an important document because the community drives that process, but it's officially adopted by local elected officials, so the BSCC formally approves the comprehensive plan. We thought it was also important to lay out this planning framework and then tie in the context to these bus emphasis corridors. So we were just chatting about the comprehensive plan, and that's at that 10,000 foot level, setting that vision, goals, objectives, and policies. So where the BECs will tie in is it will be amended into the existing comprehensive plan and the future land use element. Now, getting a little bit closer to the site, the specific requirements is the land development code. And the land development code houses all the different rules and regulations in which a property owns with their land. It gets into specifics about setbacks and other requirements like that. So one portion of this bus emphasis corridor initiative is to have that land development code language, which is currently being developed now. And it includes the site-specific requirements such as access management, sidewalks, parking reductions, all those sorts of things that you would want to see in a site for a transit-supportive environment. Then the third part of this framework are technical manuals that the county has. These are usually comprehensive guides to direct the ongoing operations and design specifications for different projects and developments of public assets that the county oversees. So there's a variety of these technical manuals, the complete streets guidebook, transportation design manuals, all sorts of things. Right now, there isn't a bus emphasis corridor component to that, but we could absolutely see in the future that being integrated to those technical manuals once the BECs are adopted and formalized. So now jumping into the BECs, what exactly are these bus emphasis corridors? Well, at its core, there are policies to expand housing opportunity, land use, and create more transit supportive places. And these policies are fixated on a set of corridors within the unincorporated county. And these corridors are selected based on a number of factors, but the first and foremost is it's where bus service exists today, and it has at least 2 buses an hour or a headway of less than 30 minutes. And if it didn't meet that first criteria, but it had respectively high ridership, we promoted that to a bus emphasis corridor. So the properties that fall along a bus emphasis corridor are within a 1/4 of a mile buffer of the BEC. Those would be eligible for an increased density or an intensity bonus if certain requirements were met. So we've got the set of BECs, but we also have another category called future BECs. And these are mostly for planning purposes, but essentially they're another set of corridors that were identified based on a variety of factors, including frequency of service, ridership, future service, and development trends and patterns. As I mentioned earlier, this language will be adopted into the future land use element as new language. So it'll be an added component to the future land use element of the existing comprehensive plan. This whole effort has been very much a collaborative partnership between a whole host of agencies, the Planning Commission, the Transportation Planning Organization, HART, various departments within the county. And I think one thing that's really important is no one organization could have done this, could have done this on their own. All these different organizations have different tools at their disposal to be working towards the visions of supporting communities that they're all bringing to the table to make this a reality. So why even go through this exercise of identifying bus emphasis corridors? Well, there are a few benefits. First of which is it increases affordability and access to opportunity. As you'll see later on, affordable housing is directly tied to these corridors, and developers would be eligible for an increased density bonus if they provided affordable housing along or within a bus emphasis corridor. It also advances smart growth goals. As you'll see when we look at the map, all of the corridors are within the existing urban service area. So we want to align development and density where services exist today. The next benefit is it really creates sustainable and helps create sustainable and resilient places. If we're building these areas that are transit supportive, walkable, all these sorts of things, we can expect to see a bit of a mode shift. You know, if it's easier for someone to walk or take the bus, we can expect maybe they won't take the car for every trip, and that in turn will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because we all know transportation sector is responsible for a significant portion of those. And then tied to that is it improves health outcomes and travel safety. If we're focusing on building these transit supportive environments that have safe places to walk, people can be outside more, be more active, and have those kind of health outcomes because they're able to, walk more regularly and have, make those choices if they're able to. Some of you may think that, hey, this sounds kind of familiar. This kind of sounds like a transit-oriented development concept. Well, you're right in the fact that they're related, but they are different in a few key ways. The first key way in which they're different is bus emphasis corridors are really aligned with existing bus service, while transit-oriented development is mostly aligned with fixed guideway transit. So the type of transit in which it's not easy to move a route or move a station. So think light rail or BRT with a dedicated lane or ferry. It's very difficult to move those stations and those routes. So another area in which they're different is that bus emphasis corridors don't exist today, but we've got local bus service today. While transit-oriented development, we're ahead of the game and we have these policies in our plan, but we don't have any fixed guideway transit yet in the unincorporated county. So we really feel like bus emphasis corridors, this whole proposal is doing the best with what we have today to connect transportation, land use, and housing. So now we'll talk a little bit about these corridors. But first, I want to alarm you with a few key pieces of information about the differences between bus emphasis corridors and future bus emphasis corridors. Bus emphasis corridors are designated on the map in green, and those are the areas that are eligible for that density and intensity bonus that Katrina will talk about later. These are corridors with existing 30-minute service, or they've got high ridership within that part of the county. The future bus emphasis corridors are shown in yellow, but those are not eligible for a density bonus. The majority of the corridors that are future BECs, those have existing 60-minute service today. And largely the purpose of having these future BECs is mostly for planning purposes, to kind of set that framework as our community grows and evolves to promote certain corridors to full-fledged BECs if that were of interest. So now you'll see the map. So this map indicates all of the bus emphasis corridors and the future bus emphasis corridors. You can find a high resolution version of that on our project page. Maybe Katrina or Chris, if you don't mind dropping that in the chat pod for folks. But a few things I want to point out before we zoom into certain segments. The first thing is you'll notice that all of this is located within the urban service area. So this big blue line that indicates the urban service area. And as mentioned earlier, we want to discourage future sprawl and align the density where services exist today. The next thing I'd like to point out is that you'll notice that there's some the grayed out area within the center part of this map. And what's grayed out is the jurisdictional boundaries of the city of Tampa and Temple Terrace. The bus emphasis corridors only apply to the unincorporated part of the county. And we thought it was important to show that transparent layer over it because the connections are important to see where these areas are being connected, but we also wanted to be clear that these policies do not apply to the city of Tampa or Temple Terrace. The one thing I would like to mention is that there's a lot of consistency, though, in the density and the development within the city of Tampa that would actually complement these corridors. So while there might not be BECs proposed for the city of Tampa today, their existing or future desired land uses align quite well along these corridors. The last kind of macro level thing I'd like to point out is those of you who are familiar with the bus system, you might notice, hey, this is not all of the routes of, there's kind of cut off, especially near the coastline. And why that is we removed all sections of those current routes that are 30 minutes or less that are in the coastal high hazard area. And the reason we did that is we had a lot of feedback from the commissioners and other stakeholders that said, do we really want to incentivize development within the coastal high hazard area? Probably not. So that's why you'll see some of the areas are kind of cut off from those areas. That doesn't mean that transit service shouldn't be there. It just means, again, we don't want to be incentivizing, a higher density in those more vulnerable areas. So now I'll go ahead and zoom into a few sections of the map. So here you'll see the town and country area. This area is really mostly suburban, and you'll see in Katrina's presentation the different land uses and then those density maxes there, but mostly single family developments over here, the bus emphasis corridors as they are today along Gunn Highway, Waters, Sheldon Road, Hanley, and bits of Hillsborough Avenue. And here is where you probably see most clearly where we remove the segments that are in the coastal high hazard area. Another key portion is around the USF area. This is one of the most dense places in the unincorporated county, along Fletcher, Florida, Nebraska, 15th and 22nd. These are all areas that we are proposing to be bus emphasis corridors. Oh, and then the stars, those just mean the HART transfer station. So there's quite a few buses that give opportunities for passengers to make transfers. And we thought that was important to call out. And the last section for zooming in is this Palm River and Brandon area. You can see over in the top left, this is near Net Park, going through 56th Street after leaving Temple Terrace. Additionally, the rest of Hillsborough Avenue, MLK, and then in Brandon, Oakfield Drive, Parsons, Palm River. And again, you can find a high-res version of this map on our project website. And the other thing I forgot to mention before I hand it over to Katrina is we are also working on a interactive mapping tool that we'll hopefully be able to share soon and post on our website, so you can zoom in and out, turn on other layers that are related to this. So yeah, lots to look forward to there. But I'll go ahead and hand it over to Katrina to talk about the policies.
Katrina, you're muted. You are still muted. Let me see if I can fix that.
Can you hear me now, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. I am co-lead on this project along with Elizabeth, and for this slide, I wanted to go ahead and go over some of the objectives that we have in the policy language for the BECs. So I won't go through this in a great detail, but this is a good overview of the policy language that we have available on our project page. So we have language around establishing a bus emphasis corridor BEC overlay, identifying those future BECs that Elizabeth just spoke to you about, development intensity and land use. So that includes a density bonus table and policies. We do have a slide specific to that upcoming, so I'll give you some more detail on that. Development form and phasing, building form and frontage, connectivity within BECs, safe, accessible, and walkable streets, on-street parking and curb uses, and amount and location of parking. One thing I'd like to note, you'll see the numbers about 4 through 9 here have this asterisk, and that indicates that Planning Commission staff are working with county staff to determine the location of certain language. So we do also have a parallel development of land development code language, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier. So some of the language that you see in our draft may be moved over to the code depending on the specificity and what is addressed in the code language. So next slide, please. Wonderful, thank you. So I mentioned that density bonus table as well as an intensity policy. So you'll see here, this is our draft table. Table 1, these are allowable density increases for bus emphasis corridors. First column here, you'll see the base land use category along with the second column for the base density. The third column shows the bonus that you can get for being within a quarter mile of a BEC, and of course meeting the BEC overlay comprehensive plan and LDC language, meeting those guidelines. So you get for Res 4, you can move from 4 to 6. In the fourth column here, you'll see the bonus maximum if you're incorporating affordable housing or transfer of development rights or TDR. So moving from that 6 to 10. And this increase in density is an increment over the existing density to remain appropriate for the context. So really making sure that we can move up in different types, but remaining compatible with the existing building form. So these densities are truth tested against what the private sector has been able to deliver in the last decade, and they're consistent with what the city of Tampa already has in place on these corridors or similar corridors. Elizabeth mentioned that earlier, noting that the city does already have some of those densities along these corridors. We also have an FAR bonus, which would be provided to encourage mixed use, service, and jobs by residential development. Next slide, please. So what could this look like in the USF area? So on the far left here, you'll see the existing conditions of Fletcher Avenue. That's a Google Street View. Below that, you'll see the base density, what exists today, are 20. Possible future conditions, you'll see right here in the middle of the slide. That's conditions at about 32 dwelling units per acre. So you'll see the jump in density there, a little bit more units, as well as possible future conditions at 35 dwelling units per acre. Next slide, please. And what could this look like in town and country? So again, existing conditions along Waters Avenue with that street view, the base density of R6, so that's typical suburban style home, and then possible future conditions at 10 dwelling units per acre, so more townhome style, but of course focusing on the walkable component there, just slight increase in density. Next slide, please. What could this look like in Palm River? So existing conditions along 78th Street and our base density of R9, again, single family homes, but then possible future conditions at 14 dwelling units per acre and 15 dwelling units per acre. So expanding that into the townhome style and increasing the density slightly. Next slide, please. So the BECs, we do have a few next steps. We'll be continuing with those collaborative partnerships that Elizabeth mentioned. The map will continually be refined with county and HART staff throughout this process. We'll be continuing to work with HART on incorporating these routes into their transit development plan, or TDP. And as was mentioned previously, we do have parallel LDC language being drafted, and that's in coordination with our consultant as well as county staff. We are doing public outreach right now. We have this virtual public meeting that you've joined. And we have our draft language and map available for public comment. That is now through July 22nd. So I encourage you, if you're here listening to us tonight, if you have opinions, if you have thoughts, please go ahead, and we'll certainly answer your questions during this call and allow time for you to speak. But please go ahead and put your comments in the public comment box. It is helpful for us to have a record, and we can go ahead and make sure that that gets included in our packets for our public hearings. We'll continue coordinating on the TDP outreach with HART, and as that LDC language is developed, we'll inform you of future meetings related to that language, public outreach meetings for that. And one final thing that I wanted to note is that this initial concept is incentive-based. So we're hoping in future phases could be more regulatory to align those resources and other improvements. But this is entirely incentive-based. There are no changes to anyone's property rights. We're just encouraging that use of that bonus. And if we move into those future phases that are more regulatory in nature, there will be even more robust outreach due to any changes that those regulations may apply. Next slide, please. This slide shows you our project page. I did put the link to this in the chat. Again, it has our draft map and language. You're able to review previous presentations and other background information. I already received a request for the PowerPoint slides that we're going over right now. Those will also be available on the project page and a PDF version, hopefully within the next day or so. You'll also be able to see our upcoming meeting dates. And of course, the link is here in the slide as well. Next slide, please. And again, please submit your comments, your feedback, any questions. Of course, we're here today to answer questions, but if you have any further questions, feel free to submit them. This public comment box is located halfway down the web page, and we appreciate your comments and feedback. And again, that runs through July 22nd, so you have a bit of time to get those in. We're looking forward to seeing those. Next slide, please. And again, important dates for this amendment. for the comprehensive plan text amendment, which is what this meeting is on, we do have a Planning Commission briefing next Monday. On August 8th, we have a Planning Commission public hearing. August 11th, we have a BOCC transmittal hearing. And should the BOCC transmit on October 13th, we will have a BOCC adoption hearing. There are comments or opportunities for public comments at those meetings, so please feel free to join us if you wish. On the other side of this slide, you'll see, oh, sorry about that. You'll see the Land Development Code amendment. So that will be heard with the Planning Commission on August 8th for a briefing, August 10th for the BOCC Code Amendment Workshop, a second BOCC or a BOCC first public hearing September 29th, October 28th with the Planning Commission for consistency finding, and finally an October 20th BOCC adoption hearing. So they are traveling parallel to each other at this moment in time. Next slide, please. And this is Elizabeth and I's contact information. Please don't worry about writing it all down. It's also available on the project page. So if you have questions after this call, please feel free to email us or give us a call, and we'd be happy to help. Next slide. And this concludes our presentation. I did see a few questions coming through in the chat. I think we can go ahead and answer those first, and then we'll open it up to anybody that wants to speak with their hand raised and go from there. So let's see here. Sure, well, there's quite a few questions that came in since I've been speaking. The first one here I see was the quarter mile from the quarter is the increased density range. So yeah, it is the quarter mile from the BECs for that density bonus. Christine, thank you for that question. Elizabeth, there's a question about the pink line on the map.
Yes, so that pink line on the map, that's will probably get refined in another version. What that pink line was, it came from a South County corridor study, so that should have actually been shown as a future BEC. We just didn't have time to change that in this version of the map, but very good observation. That will be changing to that yellow, that future BEC in the next iteration.
I see a longer question here from Justin Willits, and I can read that out. I think this is for you, Elizabeth. Did you all add the 360 and 275 Alex route alignments? I know they're a limited stop in the city, but their stop spacing and unincorporated are more consistent with local service. They're also hourly. Lastly, the 360 from Brandon is a, sorry, I'm putting this down. Lastly, the 360 from Brandon is a route that offers a time competitive option to driving to downtown. I would suggest adding that route alignment at a minimum. And is there more here? Oh, nope, that's a second question.
No, that's a really great comment and feedback. My understanding is that the express routes were explicitly left out, that we wanted to be local bus service, but maybe that's something that we can reevaluate. And if it's not a bus emphasis corridor, maybe we can put it as a future one, but that's a great point, and we'll be sure to consider that in the next iteration.
For that, Justin, I am seeing another question here from Sean Wilson, and he stated, I suggest you eliminate the concept of future BEC and simply make all the future areas regular BECs from day one. This creates a virtuous cycle where density is encouraged that will justify the expansion of 30-minute bus service. So not really a question there, but a great comment to consider as we move forward with this. So thank you, Sean. Let's see. We had someone mention that they would like us to contact them. They've left the meeting. So Elizabeth, you and I can follow up with them afterwards. And let's see, trying to find the name of the next person, Mauricio Rojas. I'm sorry if I'm getting that incorrect. Sorry, this little screen is a little small, trying to expand this so I can read the statement here. Secretary Gwen has threatened to not support the Florida Ave arterial BRT because HART does not have the future resources to operate it, yet FDOT wants to move forward on the Fowler Ave BRT. It makes no sense because it reduces connectivity, and yet FDOT complains we do not have viable connections. How can this forum address these contradictions? So that is the first question there. Elizabeth, I
Yeah.
don't know if you have any thoughts on that
I'll
one.
take a stab at that. It's a interesting point, but unfortunately, it can't really be resolved in this kind of and with this project at all, because again, that these are focused on the unincorporated parts of the county, and I believe that the Florida Avenue, Tampa Avenue, that BRT is all within the city, so there's no jurisdiction with this initiative on this, and I don't. So yeah, that's my only comment on that part. And I believe Fowler, there's parts of Fowler in the unincorporated county. And of course, we would love that to continue to be a bus emphasis corridor.
I would add to that we're working closely with HART on this to make sure that the routes are included in the TDP. But really, this initiative is aimed at what the county can do to make the land uses more transit supportive. So it doesn't really change the ability of the county, and then the bus service is still operated by HART, if that makes sense, to add to that question. There's a second part here as well. There is a proposal to expand the 34 HART line west of Sheldon, but I do not see it on this map. How will this connect to this presentation? That's for the second question. We are working. My response to that would be that we are including only existing bus service at this time. There is the chance that we could update this map with future plan amendments. So we'll go through the same public process. We have outreach similar to what we're doing right now. So we do see this as an evolving process, but at this time, again, we're including only existing bus service. So nothing that future, with the exception of those future BECs that you see there with the expanded bus service, but all of it is existing. A third question here, again from Mauricio. The most important part of increasing use in an unincorporated area will require bus shelters to attract suburban users. Will bus shelters be significant, unlike within the city? So again, this is really focusing on what the county can do. The county may be able to increase sidewalk access to a bus stop, but the bus stop itself may be under HART's purview, if you will. Let's see. Fourth question here, and I'm really happy we're getting a lot of questions, so thank you for this. In some conversations within HART, the idea of creating local smaller buses to enter into the suburb, like in Town and Country, if HART expansion is expected within suburbs, it will be necessary to implement smaller buses into the suburb. So that's a good comment. And again, we're focusing on that existing bus service, but we'll take this into consideration as things evolve. And Elizabeth, did you have anything to add for those questions and comments?
No, I think you covered it perfectly.
See, and sorry, if anybody wants to speak out loud, we will get to you. We just had quite a few here in the question chat. So another one from Christine, how will buses themselves be prioritized? Is BEC a precursor to BRT? So again, this is a collaborative partnership with HART. So we're working with what the county can do to help support transit. But that collaboration needs to happen so that we can move forward and have more transit supportive density. The precursor to BRT, that again, this is existing bus service. So we're working with what is existing, and we don't necessarily have that dedicated lane. So perhaps that's something we address in the future. Elizabeth, anything to add there?
I would just add that bus operations are solely at the discretion of HART. We build a collaborative relationship, but they have the best insight into their operations and resources, and that's going to continue to be at their full discretion on bus service.
So another question was City of Tampa not included. Again, this is the amendment specifically for unincorporated Hillsborough County. They're included in our map, again, for connectivity purposes to show that route, but this is specific to unincorporated county. As Elizabeth mentioned earlier, the densities within the city are either at or above the level that we're suggesting here for unincorporated county. So this is very specific to unincorporated county. And we are in the process of working with the city to update their comprehensive plan. So that is ongoing. So please stay tuned if you're interested in that. But this is a separate unincorporated county effort. Let's see. Another comment from Sean Wilson. I also suggest you increase the distance from 1/4 mile to 1/2 mile. It's still very walkable at 1/2 mile. The idea should be to make this attractive to a variety of developers, not to adhere strictly to some standards. So thank you for that, Sean. We will certainly take that into consideration as we move forward with this amendment. Let's see, the next one again from Christine Acosta. How will SCBEC connect to Cross Bay Ferry? I'm not sure. Oh, South County?
South County, maybe?
Yeah. That one, I mean, again, the TOD would be more of those connections to things like a ferry or potential rail. So that's, I think, more at the discretion of how things move forward in the future, that we're working with what we have now existing. Do you have anything to add to that, Elizabeth?
No, I totally agree. I think it's a great point. But in this iteration, it's not really addressed, but could definitely see that being incorporated into future versions of the BECs as they continue to get refined.
Again, thank you for all the questions. It's nice to have so much engagement. Next question I'm seeing here, again from Christina Costa. Are there BECs in other US or global locations that we're copying? So by the name bus emphasis corridors, I don't know that. I think that's something unique that we're going for. We have seen similar efforts. I think it was documented, some connecting affordable housing and land use and transit. We have a white paper, I believe, that's available from the TPO that kind of jump-started this thought process, if you will. But I don't know specifically off the top of my head what that would be, or that there is a specific policy that we're copying necessarily. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just yeah, there was that white paper. I have heard some people say that there isn't another community that we're aware of where we could heavily borrow from. So while it's very much influenced by other best practices, we haven't found kind of a carbon copy. So that just being said, that this is very much going to be a learning process and probably will need more refinement, since it is something where we haven't seen a direct copy of. But if anybody hears of anything that's very similar, we've looked around Florida and looked around the country and couldn't find it, an exact match. But again, kind of getting to the core of this, what can we do with the tools that we have available with us today to connect transportation, affordable housing, and land use?
Okay. Can you add density increases for future corridors to increase ridership, etc.? And this is from Ronald Weaver. I think the concept of the future BECs is for planning purposes to prepare for those connections that we can make, but there's a possibility that those future BECs could become regular BECs and then be subject to that density increase in the future. But in this iteration, keeping them future BECs for potential to implement for regular BECs in the future. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, we got it.
Okay. We have another question. I actually think this is for Chris. Why can't I see the questions? So I'm not sure if only panelists and organizers are able to see the questions.
They are all in the attendee area. You should be able to. Are you not an organizer?
Oh, that's not for me. That's someone asked that, an attendee.
Oh, the attendees can't see the questions. The individual.
Yeah,
questions.
I didn't know if they were able to see the questions.
They're not.
Okay. We may be able to get a copy of these and post them on the project page so that folks can take a look at them more closely. So thank you for your patience on that, everyone. We will get that out after the call. Let's see, Christopher Vela. Your question is, why not include a BEC for the entire length of Dale Mabry? Himes gets too skinny and covering the searches to improve frontage will be expensive. Dale Mabry is a major north and south corridor. So Elizabeth, I think I'll pass that one over to you if you're comfortable answering that one.
We can definitely take a look at it. Again, the way that the BECs were defined is where do we have that high frequency, 30-minute service today? And if it didn't have it, and it was 60-minute service in the unincorporated county, we made sure it was a future corridor, but we'll definitely go back and take a look at that one.
I did get a comment, it goes to USF from Mauricio, and I apologize, but I'm not sure what that is directly in reference to. So if you have any questions specific, please let us know. Again, we'll give you a moment to raise hands after this. Let's see, from Dana Lazarus, I see if this is supposed to emphasize bus corridors in unincorporated county, where will that take place? Perhaps there shouldn't be headway restrictions since the few routes there are out there have hour-long wait times. Also, how will the TPO and BOCC work with HART to increase the number of routes in unincorporated county and reduce headway times? Elizabeth, are you comfortable taking that one, or?
Yeah. So where it'll take place are those locations that were shown on the map and within that fourth mile buffer. To your point about having headway restrictions, since 2/3 of the system of the bus routes are an hour-long waits, it was just one way for us to focus that density along areas that we know transit will exist, into the future, because it already has some of those things that make it, likely for the continuing service, because there is, a need there. There's the customer base there. So we just wanted to, be able to kind of whittle that down so that we can, increase those amenities with the tools that the Bus Up Corridor provides to those specific areas, and really concentrate the resources for that transit supportive environment in the places where we know transit will exist, into the future. And then for the last question about how the TPO and the BOCC will work with HART to increase the number of routes in the unincorporated county. The TPO dedicates a portion of its STBG to go to HART. HART's a member on the TPO board, and there's a good relationship there. So I think there are resources there that exist today in terms of funding, and then staff time and consultants that are being lent and can continue to be lent to HART. But I'm sure there are other ways that, the partnership between the TPO, the Board of County Commissioners, and HART will continue to grow in the future. Katrina, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it on that one. I'm just seeing if we're talking and more questions are coming through, so I'm trying to make sure we have time to get to everything. We did get a great job from Christine. Thank you very much, Christine. Appreciate that. And then a comment that it would be nice to be able to see the questions in the future. So I will certainly get a lessons learned going from that, and certainly make this available on the project page as well. A couple of thank yous for the answers to the questions. A comment again from Dana, affordable housing and density should be required being in caps. Place those units in the county's community land trust. So thank you for that comment, Dana. Again, just a friendly reminder, and again, we'll make copies of this, but please, 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 if you have any feedback, love it, hate it, whatever you think, review the policies, review the map, please put it in the public comment box. That's very helpful to us, and will be included in our packets for our public hearings. So thank you for that. Let's see here. Another question from Clara Lawhead. Will the Northwest Van Dyke route be able to have a downtown Tampa route express in the future? I think that might be a question for HART, unless you have something specific that you know about that, Elizabeth.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that, but HART would definitely be best positioned to answer that question.
And when we go through these questions, we have been in close contact with HART staff, so we will try to get an answer to that and get back to you, Clara. Let's see, Christine had to leave, but she noted here that she believes Chicago did a similar concept and land use overhaul, and that she'll send us a link to that. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Christine. Grace Perdomo, and again, I apologize if I'm butchering anyone's names. Do BECs address first mile, last mile connections to the corridors to ensure enhanced, improved bikeability, walkability to support transit, or is this under purview of HART? So we do have policy language related to bikeability, walkability, connectivity within the BEC language. That's a bit more broad in the comprehensive plan language that will be fleshed out a bit more, I believe, in the LDC language, which will be available again later on our project page once that draft is available. So if you look in there, and if you'll recall on the slides, we had those objective headings, and some of that was safe, accessible, walkable streets. That would be the section that I would direct you to look at in the draft language if that's what you're interested in. So anything to add to that, Elizabeth?
No.
Okay. Another question here from Christina Bosworth. The entire map for the South Shore area needs to be reviewed. The pink line along US 301 from State Road 674 north does not have a bus route currently, no service whatsoever. If the requirement for future is service every 60 minutes, this area will not qualify. Also, the yellow feature BEC indicated along State Road 674 does not have service in the area indicated. Please review the entire South Shore area. And I see you nodding your head there, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Christina is very astute, and I should have been more explicit when we were doing that line. You are absolutely right. That pink line and then those two corridors, those are actually the only future BECs that don't have current 60-minute service. But why we put them on there was because they were highlighted in a 2014 plan, the South County South Shore Circulator Study. So since there was a desire for transit there, those were the only future BECs that don't have transit service today that are identified on the map. So really good eye, and that's the justification for it.
Elizabeth, so I see a couple more questions here. One from Waldo Carval. Do you foresee any NIMBY issues, not in my backyard for anyone who doesn't know that, in some of the northwest and eastern sections of the map? So how I would answer that is that this is entirely voluntary. It's not a requirement. If folks do decide to move forward with the density bonus and then therefore go through the process for that, perhaps folks would come out and have opinions on that, but it's not changing anyone's property rights. So I wouldn't foresee necessarily like a lot of pushback, but I don't have a crystal ball on that. So anything to add to that, Elizabeth?
No, I agree with exactly what you said. Since it's more carrot, not so much stick, it doesn't change anyone's property rights today. So I don't think we'd see any NIMBYs come out, but certainly anything is possible.
And we did with that, the bonuses, I mean, it's not going from, a regular single family home to like Water Street urban. I mean, there is that compatibility aspect there as well. So that's been taken into consideration with that density bonus table. And then I see another question that works well with all those questions here from Clara Lawhead. Can you talk more about the details of the land density credits? I believe you're referencing the density bonus table there, and then how does that affect property owners? So again, this is entirely incentive-based, entirely voluntary for a property owner that owns a property. If they have a property within a quarter mile of a BEC and they'd like to use that bonus, then they would be able to start the process and go from that, for example, I think it was Res 4 to if they're within a quarter mile and they're not doing TDR, transfer development rights, and they're not doing affordable housing, I believe that went to 6. If they are doing affordable housing, that would be Res 10. And as you saw from the photos, that's that, slight bump and increase in density. So again, there would, I'm sure, be an outreach process. If they were to change, they would have to go through, make sure that they're in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and then also the policy language in the LDC. But it is entirely voluntary, so it's not something that would require current property owners to do anything differently. Anything to add there, Elizabeth?
No, you did a great job.
Let's see, I think those are all the questions that have come through. Let's see here. I'm seeing a couple of chats from Chris.
Do we have anybody who maybe raised their hand that wanted to come off mute and ask a question or give some feedback?
It looks like all the hands are down right now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll give it a moment to see if anybody does want to raise their hand. Again, thank you for all the questions. And Chris did note in the chat here, I think, to everyone that there is no way to show the attendee questions to all attendees other than as a chat log at the end of the meeting. Chris, if we can do that, that would be great. That way folks can immediately download it if they would like. But Elizabeth and I can, we do have a frequently asked questions on our project page, and perhaps we can include this list of questions on, like below this meeting recording on the project page for folks.
Yeah, Katrina and Elizabeth, may I raise my hand, please? I've been trying on the dashboard and haven't succeeded. Let me ask about the $700,000 that the Board of County Commissioners just allocated to HNTB to study where the penny sales tax money would go. Is there going to be any coordination between some of these future bus corridors and where the money would go? I think if you study some of the previous where the penny sales tax money would go, if passed again in November, mentioned something like there are 300 miles of current X quality bus service as far as headways and the like, and that up to 800 miles of bus corridors would be available if the penny passed over the 30 years. And I'm just wondering if there's some way to correlate so that people can see that much of what's being discussed now regarding these future corridors would be a part of what they'd get if they will pass what I enthusiastically support, which is the penny sales tax coming back in November. Any thoughts on coordinating what you're doing here tonight so elegantly and where the penny sales tax would go to help folks deal with existing and especially future bus corridors and where they're needed and where they can help get us affordable housing?
I can hop in there for a moment, and I believe that was, is that Mr. Ron Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, hi Ron, thank you.
Yeah.
The short answer to that is yes, that the TPO and the Planning Commission are participating in that county study. Again, this is what we have now, existing service, working within, we're not anticipating, or this isn't planned for with any of the surtax. We're moving forward pending that. That's kind of separate, I guess I would say. And then Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, no, I just would like to reiterate the last point that you made is this proposal will go forward with or without the penny sales tax. 45% of that revenue, if it passed, would go to Heart. So, logically you would think, oh, maybe there could be a change to this. Nothing has been formally coordinated to date, but we will absolutely bring that back to our management team and get their thoughts. But it's a great suggestion.
Thank you. And then one last elaboration of my question about future corridor increases is there someone that might study sort of how the increased density, maybe not quite as much increased density, but maybe at least a portion, like half of the increased density, to incentivize with respect to the future corridors, and whatever is a fair amount of density increase for an existing corridor, there'd be some kind of a, I don't know, I guess it's sort of a bootstrap, it's a hybrid, it's an earn your way bootstrap for a future corridor to get at least some density increases, maybe not as much, as a way of dealing with the ability to get the ridership and the money from the tax base in order to pay for the future buses. Chicken and egg, as I think I mentioned in my question, as far as reasons why you would want to at least partially incentivize not just existing, but future bus corridors. Plus you have the 18-month to 2-year or 2.5-year lag between the way these deliver and their tax dollars.
So I think I believe you had a similar comment in the question about that, and we'll definitely note that. It's something to consider, but I think it would have to be a future phase of this as we're moving forward to consider how this will evolve in the future. But it's definitely, we really appreciate the comment, and I apologize, my cat is interested in planning apparently, but yes, so that's something that we will definitely take into consideration as we move forward with this portion of the project. And I'd like to reiterate that there is the possibility that we would have future phases of this project with additional outreach. Yeah, that would be my answer for that. Anything to add, Elizabeth?
Thank you, Elizabeth.
No.
All right, thank you. I did see one other question come through in the chat questions here. Any thoughts on allowing up to 4 units by right within a buffer area similar to what St. Pete is doing? Sorry if this has already been addressed, I arrived late. And that's from Dana. So what we've proposed here would still require property owners to go through the PD process as opposed to being by right. That's definitely something that we can consider, but I think right now with this incentive-based approach, allowing folks to kind of go through the process and make sure that they're conforming again with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. But that's certainly an example to look into. And I see that Dana also said we need the infill in the units. So thank you for that comment.
Didn't Minneapolis do that? And not just in bus corridors, but the 2 or 3 or 4 units as of right in all of Minneapolis and 2 or 3 other cities. And so I think the bus corridor being a natural location for 4 as of right, that really deserves some serious attention for the affordable housing advocates, that you would take the bus corridor, qualify the bus corridor, and we debated existing versus future. And if it's an existing bus corridor and it meets your high standard of less than 30 minutes or high ridership, I can't imagine you wouldn't take it to the 4 units as of right in order to deal with the real affordable housing crisis in a thoughtful way instead of in a timid way. I don't know who asked the question, but whoever it is, I'm glad they did. Is that Sean?
That was Dana Lazarus.
Thank you.
And she had a couple other comments in here, just making sure. I know we're running out of time here, but density bonuses are great for more units like multifamily buildings. Inclusionary zoning, even better for higher density multifamily buildings. Anything to add to that, Elizabeth, what I said earlier and for her original question?
No, it's something we'll definitely bring back and consider. They're great points. Just haven't been incorporated to date in the current version.
Elizabeth and Katrina, this is Melissa. I just wanted to add something in response to that, because it's a great idea and discussion that Dana and Ron are suggesting. And really what places like Minneapolis and St. Pete are doing is allowing those things by right in the zoning. So what we're talking about is in the comprehensive plan, adjusting the overall maximum density that can be allowed on these corridors potentially. But that what would be another tool in our toolbox would be to allow in the zoning, in the standard zoning districts that already apply along these corridors, the allowance to do duplexes and quadplexes and things of that nature in addition to single family homes. So that's kind of a different tool that would pair nicely with this, but not something that the Planning Commission is directly able to initiate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. That was Melissa Zornita, our Executive Director on the Planning Commission side, so we appreciate that. And I just see a couple more thank yous in the chat, so thank you for that. Are there any other folks that wish to ask questions unmuted?
Everyone should be able to unmute themselves if they want to ask questions now.
Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything right now and realizing that we are at time for this meeting. Again, I'd like to say thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate the engagement, the questions, the feedback. It's sincerely appreciated. And again, just a friendly reminder, our public comment is available through July 22nd. So there's still some time. Today's July 7th. So please, please, please feel free to put any of your questions, comments in that public comment box. Specifically, if you have further questions that you'd like us to address with you, our email and phone number are available on the project page, which was linked in the chat this evening. So we look forward to hearing from you as you review the language and have a chance to look at the map perhaps a little bit more closely. And Chris, if you would, could you please put the questions in the chat log as we leave here so that folks are able to download that if they wish. And then we will also follow up with posting that on the project page.
I will not get the chat log immediately, unfortunately. So anyone who wants a copy of that can email you and I'll give it to you.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, please email us if you need that, and we'll also make it available on the project page for folks. And I think that's about it. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for helping us run this smoothly. And we look forward to hearing from you and getting those comments and any questions that you may have. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.